The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time Jesus said to his disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be my manager.' And the manager said to himself, 'What shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses.' So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill and sit down. Quickly write 50. Then he said to another, 'How much do you owe?' He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourself by means of a righteous wealth, so that when it fails they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful with the unrighteous wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been faithful with that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." The Gospel of the Lord. So I think Pope Gregory the Great, in his words about this Gospel, was probably quite near the mark when he talked about Jesus having a sarcastic tone, and I think that fits very much. Because as we can see, the dishonest manager does face justice for his actions, because ultimately the Gospel is emphasising that while dishonesty, treachery, that sort of thieving kind of way, can lead to a better life, it ultimately leads to a worse outcome. So that is, you might get instant gratification for our dishonest dealings, but ultimately we will pay for them one way or another, either this life or the next. Right through Luke's Gospel, Luke focuses on sin quite heavily, and especially hell. Jesus has several parables in Luke's Gospel relating to hell and its consequences. And as we know, St. Paul often talks about money, calls it filthy lucre, filthy money, because it is often at the root of all evil. And we see also in Luke's Gospel Lazarus. Remember how Lazarus is in hell, and he shouts to Jesus, he asks the Lord just for a drop of water, just one drop of water on my lip to ease this burning flames. And what does God say? No. You had your chance. You had your chance in life. You had a choice to go for goods, for wealth of this world, not just money, but fame, acclamation, all the rest, or to turn to me. And he said you had Abraham. Okay, you didn't have me, but you certainly had Abraham and all the prophets. And I think this is what Jesus is trying to get at. Obviously he's trying to get at. We've got to turn away from the world and turn towards him. Because mammon isn't just money. It's any sort of idol that comes into our lives and tries to push out God. We've got to stay focused on the Lord. Everything else, as I keep telling you, doesn't matter. What we're going to be judged on is what we say, what we do, what we don't say, and what we don't do. And I've explained to you before, lots of people go around saying they're good people. What makes us good people, especially in the eyes of God, is what we say and do, and what we don't say and what we don't do. So that's equally important. But God's obviously given us a clear warning here. A clear warning to make that choice, to make God at the centre of our lives and nothing else, no idols, no money, nothing else. This is of course the same Jesus who will wipe away every tear. The same Jesus who says, "Worry not, little flock." God loves us, of course he loves us. He came and he died for us. But look, there's a terrible heresy that's rising its horrible head again, called universalism. Universalism is one of the worst heresies, because it says that everyone ultimately will be saved, that everyone will ultimately go to heaven. And when you unpack that, where it seems nice on the surface, it's actually venom. Because first of all, it destroys the passion of the cross. It means that the cross wasn't necessary, that everyone's going to be saved regardless. And we're missionaries, we're here for a purpose. And this is why constantly we hear in the gospel about the nature of hell. We've got to turn people away from that. Ignorance is not going to be an excuse. That's why we're missionary people. We have to show in our own lives the love of God, that hope that lives in our own hearts. That same Jesus, remember, who's going to wipe away every tear and who says, "Worry not, little flock." It's the same Jesus who wouldn't give Lazarus a drop of water to ease the pain. A little drop of water on his lip, and he said, "No, you've had your opportunity." So God's here until we take our final breath. God will be loving us and behind us with grace is abundant if we turn to him. But we have to understand that life has a meaning, and that meaning is when we die. The great eschaton, the great judgment. That's death and judgment, heaven or hell. That's what we're here all about. We've got to prepare for that. We've got to live our lives for that. We've got to realise this isn't just sentimentalism. This isn't just something nice, some sort of back pocket insurance policy. This is something real, and we have to live it out in our lives constantly. I wasn't here last week, was I? No. I was telling last week, every morning when I wake up, I make the sign of the cross. Now, we're all human beings, so we wake up in the morning, we have a scratch our head, and it takes a few minutes, certainly for me, to come into focus of the day. As soon as you come into focus, as soon as you become fully conscious, just make a sign of the cross. You don't need to make a big dramatic one, just use your thumb, a little sign of the cross on the forehead, and that's just you don't need to focus on it. You're not praying. You're just outwardly commending yourself, your day to God. You're actually saying to God in a physical way, "Look, I understand that you are the centre of my life." Because we know that the worries of the world will quickly come in and consume us. There'll be kids or work or money or whatever, money worries, whatever it is. But putting that little sign of the cross commends the day to God. It acknowledges to God that he is at the centre of our lives, and we know that we are living our lives to come close to him. And I think that's what God Jesus is trying to ultimately get to in the Gospel of Luke and in our reading today.